Hey there, guys. Octavian here, and this is 100 Casts episode 43. At least I hope it is, because if I got the number wrong, that would be a little bit embarrassing. But anyways, this replay was sent in to me by the Lee Sin on Blue Team. Goes by the name of PepsiAverage, and that's a pretty great name. We've got some other pretty great names in this game too already. Looking at the Sona Hidden Skills, that's quite a nice name. But let's get off that topic and onto one a little bit more relevant to the gameplay here. We have some matchups to talk about, and this game's going to have some interesting ones. Down in bottom lane, we have a Sona and Kog'Maw playing up against a Soraka and an Ezreal. That, aside from the Ezreal, is a very, very immobile bot lane. And that immobility is even farther enhanced by the fact that Soraka has opted not to take Flash. During the loading screen for this game, I was very intrigued and a little bit confused by that pickup from the Soraka. She's decided to go for heal and clarity, looking to relive the days when Soraka was just a heal and mana battery for her ally, whereas now she's more of just a healing battery, but she still wants to be able to give people mana, so she's got that clarity. She's going to be a pool of resources from which this Ezreal can draw. So the downside to that, however, is that Soraka does not have very much hard CC. Her silence is not often a route. It's very easy to get out of the pool of silence before it dissipates and leaves you rooted. So it's not really a very reliable way to CC someone. And Star Call is, you can land it fairly easily. It moves very quickly if someone's next to you as well. That's one of the interesting new mechanics with the newer Soraka. Her Q falls faster if you cast it close to you rather than far away from you. So it's easier to hit when someone's right up next to you. But the problem is, if someone's right up next to you, then hitting it becomes all the more imperative as Soraka, who is squishy and not really very mobile. But I digress. We'll move on to some of the other matchups here. In the middle lane, we have a Zed versus a LeBlanc, and the lane's going about the way I expected it to. The Zed is starting to lose out on the health bar battle there, because LeBlanc just has the range advantage over him, not only with her spells, but also with her auto attacks, so ooh, Sona taking quite a bit of damage there. Sona is one of the squishiest champions in the game early on. She actually has less effective health than a cannon minion does when she's at level 1. So she can go down fairly quickly, as we see up in top lane, the Renekton versus Aatrox matchup. Now that is one that I have played quite a few times myself, Aatrox being one of my favorite champions in the game, and it is a difficult matchup to come out ahead in, as the Aatrox, as a lot of matchups are against Renekton. Renekton is quite a good lane bully, but it looks like the Aatrox is doing a decent job well enough. Ooh, the chain lands, it binds, there's an ignite onto the Zed. She's going with the auto attacks, flash burn. Meanwhile, up in top lane, we have PepsiAverage coming in. He manages to pop the passive from Aatrox. He flashes away, the ignite drops from the Renekton. Flash forward for the stun. First blood going over to Lee Sin. First gank of the game, pulling off successfully, as we did also see a flash burned in the middle lane from the Zed. The action immediately swapped up to top, and oh, more action in the middle lane. Flash from the LeBlanc. She goes forward with his distortion as well, but not quite enough damage. Zed manages to escape, swapping away to a shadow just in time to survive. Well done by him. And bot lane. Bot lane's interesting. It's going the way of this Soraka-Ezreal combo, and no, I can see why that happens, because Sona does have very good early game pressure. Her damage is incredibly high. However, if she missteps, or misfloats, I suppose, she can often find herself on the back foot, simply because she's so very squishy. So if she gets out of position and loses a bunch of that health bar, then she doesn't really have very much recourse. So Renekton now showing why he can dominate this lane up in top lane. Slices and dices, brings himself right behind the Aatrox and does tons of damage. He's going to have to go right back to base after just coming back. He just got back to the lane, and he has to head back to base already. You know something else interesting about the summoner spells this game, aside from Soraka's interesting choices in the bottom lane? We have 2 ignites in the top lane. I feel like I'm all the way back in Season 2 or something. I haven't seen a 2 ignite lane in top lane in a very long time. Usually, well, ignite or teleport is the standard, and teleport's kind of the more heavily played standard of those two, so to see 2 ignites is a bit of a rarity, and it's going to be a very aggressive, very bloody lane, as we've already seen. The Aatrox is still level 2, whereas Renekton is level 5. That is, I mean, Renekton already wins this matchup. He doesn't even need the level advantage, but that's just bad, and PepsiAverage coming in for the gank in middle lane. Uses the ward hop, but doesn't quite have... Q doesn't land either onto the Zed immediately afterwards, so doesn't quite have the ability to make that gank happen. Just showing that he's around, though, giving some good pressure to the middle lane. Not that the LeBlanc really needed it. She has a 16 CS lead at this point, and she managed to force the Zed out of lane once or twice already. It looks like she's doing it again. She snares him up. He gets stopped out right behind his tower. He manages to escape with a few hundred health left, but that's a few hundred health left. And Renekton is bullying this Aatrox away, as you might expect from a Renekton with a level lead early on in the game, and also a gold lead for that matter. He has a CS lead, and that assist from when Lee Sin came top and got the first kill and only kill of this game so far. Ooh, going in with the distortion, doing some good damage. Doesn't quite land the chain, though. Hit onto a minion, so she's not going to be able to tower dive. Don't really think she was going to be able to anyways. LeBlanc has a lot of mobility, but she's very squishy. Meanwhile, up in top lane, Renekton, again, pushing away the Aatrox. I feel like that's going to be the story of this game, at least in the early game. Aatrox does scale fairly well into late game. Ooh, distortion, used twice. The ulti burned as well. Meanwhile, up in top lane, Aatrox is low on health. Purple team is having a hell of a time of it so far. Q does not quite line from Ezreal, so Kog'Maw actually going to be able to trade back fairly well, but you have to trade back really well or burst them down in a lane like this. Soraka is incredibly good at sustaining up. Even after her changes, she's still got that old Soraka feel where she can sustain up a lane forever, and Renekton took 2 tower hits. Speaking of sustain, though, he does have Call the Meek. But Aatrox has his own sustain in the W, as you can see, the third proc healing him quite a bit, especially when he's this low on health. Aatrox likes being just below half health, because that's when he gets the most healing, but you don't want to be too low on health, or else Renekton could burst you down instantaneously and you die. And while he can ignore death for a little bit, one time, he can't ignore death every time, and so... But, speaking of that, Aatrox's passive is back up, and he's managed to stay next to a minion wave long enough to sustain back up above half health, actually. So he's managed to pull himself back into this lane. He does still have a CS discrepancy against the Renekton, but he can start to make that up here. He's managed to pull himself back to a point where he can start to claw back into the game. But we've had enough time to have some people head back to base. Some people have picked up items. We should go ahead and talk about some of them. One of the interesting pickups I see here is that LeBlanc has gone with a Forbidden Idol, and Ezreal is entirely out of mana. I don't know if he really wants this fight. Heal and Clarity, both used at the same time. Now Ezreal has mana and a bunch more health. I suppose that's what Soraka can do with those 2 summoner spells. Just simply say, what do you mean we don't have enough mana? Oh, the Kog'Maw caught a little bit out of position, but the Ezreal's trying to chase. He goes through the Sona. The Sona flashes forward. She's keeping on the chase. And now Zed in the middle lane getting ignited. Burst down by the LeBlanc. And Sona manages to finish off Ezreal in the bottom lane. That's not very good. I mean, it didn't go over to Kog'Maw, at least. But Ezreal and Soraka were holding this lane pretty well. So Soraka is going for the 1v2. Those bananas are hurting. But the slow from Kog'Maw going to be enough to stop her chase. Sona nearly went down there to those vicious bananas. Those are some pretty rotten bananas. You know, fun fact, bananas no longer grow in the wild. The only bananas which ever grow are ones that are grown on controlled plants and controlled farms, because they can no longer sustain themselves in the wild. It's pretty depressing, actually. Up in the top lane, we have Renekton going in. He lands the stun onto Aatrox. Aatrox turns around. He has the full passive bar, the full Bloodwell, but he doesn't want to take the fight. That's probably the best situation he could take a fight in, when he has Bloodwell up and the bar is full, giving him the most amount of passive attack speed that he can possibly gain. But still, Renekton's just too far ahead at this point, and he's managed to pick up a Giant's Belt, and Ezreal manages to land the Q. Nicely shot. There goes Kog'Maw. The Cathian surprise, not going to be surprising anybody this time. Ezreal gets away from that very easily. Not that it would have really done much if it had hit him anyways. At this point, Ezreal was full on health, and he's got a health pot to drink that in case he takes some damage from a undead Kog'Maw. Ooh, the chain lands. The Q is on him. The extra damage comes out. Turns around with Deathmark, though, wants to try and bring down the LeBlanc. The Ignite is burning. The Deathmark pops, but it's not quite enough damage in the auto-attack. The auto-attack finishes off Zed. Meanwhile, Udyr is down in the bottom lane. He's going after the Ezreal. The Soraka ult not going to be enough to save his life. And Sona, yet again, brings down the Prodigal Explorer. Now up in top lane, we have Lee Sin coming in under the tower for a gank. Oh, interrupts the Dark Flight with a Dragon's Rage. Very well done by PepsiAverage. Now Rapper Mouse is diving into the turret, slice and dices right through it. Ignite is dropped. He has his ulti taken around too. Aatrox goes down once again. Lee Sin doing a good job of keeping the pressure on up in the top lane where they definitely have the early game advantage. They're against an Aatrox as Renekton and Lee Sin. That is one of the most dominant early games that I can think of to throw up against an Aatrox and keep him down in that lane, and they've certainly been doing a good job of it. Meanwhile, down in bottom lane, though, Soraka might be in a bit of trouble. Gets slowed up, but we have the double distortion from LeBlanc, and that damage is a little bit absurd. He has the magic pen from the Sorcerer's Shoes, and there is no magic resistance items on the side of Zed there. Has not gone for the Hex Drinker instead. Looks like he's going for a Brutalizer and the Boots 5, and she goes in, she lands the chain, and she lands the Q. Not that that's too hard to land, it's a point and click, but she gets the kill. Meanwhile, Udyr, though, finishes off the pesky Lee Sin, trying to invade in onto his jungle, and Soraka's doing her best to guard against this Sona coming forward. Ooh, Sona does damage. Those levels that she has are allowing her to do quite a bit of damage to the power core. Now up in top lane, Aatrox choosing now to go in. He bops his ulti, but doesn't quite have the ability to stick to the Renekton. Meanwhile, LeBlanc has roamed down to bottom lane. She has the ulted version of her Q. Yep, that's kind of expected that. Not really too much remarkable to say there. The Sona was a little bit, or Kog'Maw rather, was a little bit out of position, and there was a LeBlanc roaming nearby, and it's a fairly predictable matchup. Pardon me, I apparently can't speak English. An immobile, squishy AD carry facing off against a fairly fed, mobile assassin. You can kind of guess how that's going to go. Meanwhile, up in top lane, though, it seems like Aatrox has done a decent job of turning this lane around. He's shortened up the CS discrepancy to only 10, but we do have Lee Sin going in onto Zed here. Tempest, then Cripple followed up for the slow. Ward hops. He wants to get the kick. He gets it under tower. Is he going to dive? He doesn't want to dive, though. He doesn't want to die for it. He would certainly get the kill, but he'd also certainly die, and he doesn't want to trade back a kill to the Zed, who's 0-3, and get him coming back into this game. It's really not worth it. Dark Flight going in onto the Renekton. He doesn't have his ulti, but Renekton does. Renekton does not care. He's way too tanky. The ult is burning him down. He lands an auto attack and call them. Oh, no, just another auto attack. Comes up. Renekton pulling off the 1v1 against Aatrox, despite the fact that at the beginning of that fight, Renekton was at 1/3 or 1/4 health, and the Aatrox was at, I don't know, 3/4 or something. It did not look like Renekton was going to turn that around, but that is one of Renekton's specialties, and he certainly delivered today. Sona coming in, doing some good damage to Soraka. Perhaps the Sona can carry them through this game. Chain lands, bonus damage. There's the mimicked Q, but she doesn't want to go under the tower. She's taking a bunch of tower hits here, and Udyr's roaming into the lane. Kind of hard to catch LeBlanc, though, as Udyr chain goes back. Pops into bear stance again, but she is kiting this out happily. I see no way that the many-faceted warrior is going to be able to catch up to the LeBlanc, and Hidden Skills is in a bit of trouble. The bush is not hiding her well enough, and we see that Ezreal's flashing forward. He lands the Q onto the Kog'Maw, wants to keep following this up. He has the ulti, he fires it off, doesn't quite land though. Guessed that the Kog'Maw would try and sidestep, and the Kog'Maw just had nerves of steel and did not move an inch to the left or the right. Couldn't really move an inch to the right anyways. There was a wall there, and you can't walk through walls, but yes, I don't know if that was simply not reacting on the side of Kog'Maw or reacting to the mind games that Ezreal played, as we see Deathmark popped in by the Zed, and I see no ways LeBlanc survives that. That is shutdown gold going over to Zed. He really needed it. He was 0-3, but now he's at least got that shutdown gold back for himself, and Dark Flight burned, but it doesn't knock up the Renekton. I don't really think he wanted that fight anyways. Renekton has finished off a Sunfire, and he has a cloth armor on top of it. I see no way that Aatrox can really harm him right now, and Aatrox is going to have to just fall back and farm as best he can with Blades of Torment. And whenever it comes into the tower, he uses auto attacks as well to sustain up from the inevitable trades that he's going to be forced into. Nice Q lands onto Zed. Lee Sin going in, he lands Tempest, he has Cripple, and his ulti, Dragon's Rage. Doing a ton of burst damage there at the very end. Finishing off the Zed. Well done by Lee Sin. Nice, clean kill, catching him out in the jungle. He has that Spirit of the Elder Lizard, so he's got some good damage under his belt for right now. Lee Sin, of course, very powerful in the early game. Can do quite a bit of damage comparatively to other people with very few items. Ooh, Soraka took a bunch of harass there. She is going to be able to heal herself up, but Soraka healing now, for herself at least, depends on the skill shot ability of that Soraka. If she can land a lot of Star Calls, she can heal up. Ooh, my lord! She's going to need to land a lot of Star Calls to fix that problem. She does land one, get some healing back, and the Kog'Maw ult does not quite land either, but Lee Sin looks like he's going for another gank. Tosses out the Q, but it doesn't even land onto a minion. That's got to be a little bit depressing. Ooh, flash forward. There's the ulti. Soraka goes down to the void. Ooze and Hidden Skills is chasing down, but realizes it's a little bit low on the health bar, so turns around back into the bush just before the Ezreal's able to turn that around. And now we have PepsiAverage coming back up to the top lane again with Rapper Mouse. Really does not want this Aatrox back in the game. He goes in, but he gets bursted down into his passive immediately. They dive back out, turn around with the Q. The good damage coming out of the Lee Sin. He does a lot. Flashes away, and the turret doesn't follow him. Turret aggro has been a little bit different since a few patches ago, but the turret forgot he existed after he flashed out of range. I suppose that was out of range. It looked like he was in range to me, but things can happen. The game can be a little bit enigmatic at times. But we have the first turret of the game most likely going down in top lane. Renekton's going to keep pushing that up, and Aatrox is nowhere to be found to defend against it with him. First turret of the game going over to blue team, who already have about a 5,000 gold lead after that. So more like a, I don't know, 3,500 gold lead before the turret went down. So Udyr up in the top lane looking to get a kill onto Renekton. He turns around with the stun, but Udyr has a red buff, so he's slowing him up despite being stunned. He flashes away. Udyr chasing with the bear stance. He might be able to catch this. He does land the stun. Renekton turns around with his ulti running, but it's not going to be enough health. There is Udyr getting the kill onto Renekton. Meanwhile, down in bot lane, LeBlanc has roamed again in the double distortion after a flash. Picks up the simple kill onto the Sona. A lot of burned for that, but it's probably worth it. Feeding the LeBlanc more just means that later on it's going to be nigh on impossible for the Kog'Maw to last very long in these team fights. And yeah, we should start looking ahead into the game a little bit here because we see the mid game forming up. The chain lands onto Zed though, and we have action on action. Zed gets snared up immediately after going with the death mark. The safeguard going to be blocking some of the damage onto the LeBlanc, and the ignite is ticking. Yosonix picks up the kill. Udyr's coming around the corner, though. He's looking for some revenge. He stuns up PepsiAverage. He's doing some really good damage there. PepsiAverage below half of his hit points. Lands the Q back, though. Is he going to go in? He follows it up with Resonating Strike. Udyr is here. He's chasing after the LeBlanc, trying to bring her down, but Dangerous Game keeps her alive. As PepsiAverage finishes off the kill onto Udyr. Meanwhile, in bottom lane, Ezreal forced to Arcane Shift away over the wall. And yeah, it looks like it's going to be the end of it. They just don't have the mobility to keep up with this Prodigal Explorer shifting around all over the place. But yeah, we should start looking towards the later game here and looking towards what will happen, how Purple Team can come back into this game, because they do have the Kog'Maw 80 carry. For the late game here, they have quite an investment in the late game with him alone. Aatrox is cut out in top lane. Tempest does not land. Cripple is not followed up upon, but Sonic Wave and Resonating Strike go through, and PepsiAverage is on a rampage. Well done. Lee Sin keeping this top lane down in the pit. But in terms of late game, Renekton's not going to be as useful as Aatrox if it gets to 6 items, and now we have LeBlanc going in. Just, whew, 3 buttons, and Zed is gone. This LeBlanc is starting to get really, really scary. Looks like she's building into a little bit of a very, very probably a death cap, I'd say, with that amplifying. Well, not amplifying tune. That's the book. Blasting Wand is the wand. That's why it's called a wand. And LeBlanc, caught out in the enemy jungle, does land the snare though, and she goes back in onto the Udyr. I'm not sure if that was the best choice. Here comes Kog'Maw. He lands the Q. He's doing some good damage. Chases after the clone, but Udyr chased after the real one. Shutdown gold going over to him. And I mean, LeBlanc could have easily gotten away there. Just distortion in the other direction rather than back into the face of the bear. Ooh, looks like we might have somebody caught out here. Sona goes over the wall, but takes crits. The Ezreal's finished off an Infinity Edge already, and those crits are paying off. My good lord, Sona is squishy. She's 2-3, or 2-2 previously, but she's still very squishy, despite the fact that she's pretty much even in this lane. Now Udyr, up in his own jungle, is getting kicked back into the Soraka. Those bananas hurt. Purple Champion has slain an Udyr. Well done by Soraka. Now Zed trying to make something happen here. Swaps forward, but there are 3 members of blue team there. Too much for him to handle. Soraka getting another banana kill. As the third turret of the game falls to blue team, they are starting to get a little bit of an insurmountable lead here from purple. It can be very hard for purple to, well, surmount it. What with it being insurmountable and all. We see Ezreal and Soraka still pushing up. They're onto the second turret down in the bottom lane. Kog'Maw coming up to defend it along with Aatrox, and they might be a little bit caught out here. Aatrox goes in, lands a slow onto the Soraka, instantly brings her down. Now Ezreal is slowed up. He's out of position, but not Rengar, that's a Renekton, is here with the stun back onto the Kog'Maw. The Aatrox immediately gets bursted down by the ulti coming across from Ezreal as well. Some good damage from the LeBlanc, and he dies in midair. It's always depressing. and you die mid-dark flight. You're like, I'm a bird, I can fly away, and then you get shot down out of the sky, and all of your dreams get shot down with you, and distortion does not quite connect. The ignite, of course, does, but that's not going to be enough, and LeBlanc is in big trouble there. Kog'Maw brings her down. Now Ezreal wants a piece of the pie, along with Renekton coming around from the side, but Udyr is here, and Udyr can save the day. Stun lands onto the Ezreal. He has heal to try and make it a bit farther away, though, but that Kog'Maw ulti and some good damage from the Udyr going to finish off that kill, as now Renekton is being chased down, but I don't think he's going to be quite as easy prey as the Ezreal. They're still chasing him, though, back into his own jungle. He slices away. He doesn't have dice because he didn't hit anything, but I don't really think he needs it. He's deep in his own jungle here. I don't think they're going to chase much further. They just turn to take the Wraith camp as consolation. Whew. Blue team got a little bit too far ahead of themselves there. Back behind the between the inhibitor and secondary turret on bottom lane. That's how far ahead of themselves they got. They got exactly that far ahead of themselves. Is now Dragon is the focus of purple team. They're going to be bringing that down as best they can, at least get some global gold back into their pockets to try and even this out a little bit, try and hold off to the late game where they do have that Kog'Maw to carry them a bit, and Aatrox, of course, is a decent late game champion as well, can build tanky items after getting 1 or 2 damage items and can just jump to the back line and deal with that Ezreal, though. Ezreal is difficult prey, though, however, we see that Udyr is invading in, but he might have been off a bit more than he could chew. LeBlanc has slain him. He has gone down. Now Zed's trying to show off for backup, but he's just forced to run away. And, yeah, that's another pick given over to this LeBlanc. She is 8-3. She has just been getting picks all over the place here. Roaming to that bottom lane whenever needed. And while Lee Sin has been focusing mainly on the top, or did at least focus mainly on the top in the early and the mid game, that was sort of made up for by the fact that there is a LeBlanc in the middle lane who can roam to the bottom. So Lee Sin really didn't need to pay too much attention to bottom lane for it to be ganked, because LeBlanc was doing his job down there. Blue team discovers that the dragon is gone. They're a little bit sad about this, but they do still have a turret lead on the board as well as a fairly sizable gold lead, so they can still try and make some other plays here, maybe push for some turrets, maybe try and get a few more picks with their LeBlanc, who is very adept at doing so. We're going to have to wait and see what the next move is from both of these teams. Sorry about that. Mouse got away from me there. It tried to escape. I have since reined it in. Fear not. We should be having a team fight fairly soon, I would suppose. The other thing about Purple Team's team comp is that they do somewhat lend themselves to team. They're a little bit split. It's weird. They have multiple split pushers. They have Udyr, Aatrox, and Zed, all of which can be great split pushers. Oh, Soraka. Oh, Soraka. Soraka is no longer with us. That is all the explanation you need, as now Zed, as well, is no longer with us. Tried to pull off a 1v1 against the LeBlanc, but LeBlanc is a little bit too fed for that, and Zed is a little bit too 1-9 for that to really work, so she manages to take him down. Does lose half of her health in the process, so she is still very squishy, but Zed lost all of his health in the process, so pretty easy to see who came out ahead there. As we have Renekton roaming down to the middle lane, does not want to let this Aatrox have any breaks at all. Aatrox goes mid, Renekton follows him. However, a lot more of Purple Team were here than just the Aatrox, and Udyr is leading the charge, trying to get the Bear Stance stun onto somebody. Ezreal shifts over the wall, though, and they're just too darn mobile. Too darn mobile. However, Sona has enough of this. Stuns up the Ezreal. Arcane Shift is not up for him to escape. He's going to be going down. Aatrox finishes off that kill, as now Renekton is deep in enemy territory. He's being brought down by the Kog'Maw's percentage damage. Ignite is burning. Yosonix picks up the kill onto the Aatrox, as now we have the LeBlanc going back in, trying to finish off the Kog'Maw, but shifts immediately back out onto her distortion platform as soon as they turn around back onto her and try and make something happen. Just being that annoying LeBlanc that she can be. She's sitting on the ward, though, and Kog'Maw is not going to let her go back there. Ooh, she has distortion up twice. She goes in some good damage, but there's the clutch heal from Soraka. Can Kog'Maw catch up to her? He cannot. Now Udyr is trying to catch up to her, but no, he cannot. The LeBlanc is too good at peeling away from the Udyr. Yosonix is unstoppable. Oof. That is not good. That is... I've said it before. I will reiterate myself that is in fact not a good thing for Purple Team. There are good things that can happen, and that's not one of them if you are rooting for Purple Team. You particularly like the color purple. Rapper Mouse chasing after Nation. Husky up in the top lane wants to get the kill onto the Zed, but Zed's a little bit mobile. One of the few champions on purple team who has true mobility and not just a speed buff or something. Him and... well, actually, no. Yeah, him and Aatrox both have true mobility, as in they have things which will take them from one place and put them in another place instantaneously or nearly instantaneously, rather than simply a speed buff. That's what I call true mobility. Whereas Udyr's Bear Stance is a speed buff. It's not true I don't know. I come up with my own phrases for things sometimes. Not as many people agree on them as I'd like, but Sonics is dominating. Zed was caught out all alone, and Zed went down. Now, Sona has managed to stun up the Ezreal. He can't flash over the wall, but luckily he's Ezreal. He has another chance. And Kog'Maw. Oh, Kog'Maw, that is a depressing feeling. And now Ezreal, I believe, is going to be able to escape from this. He does have the red buff. Sona flashes forward, does some good damage. He's going to have Arcane Shift up very soon. The Bear Stance stun. The Bear Stance stun lands. Udyr gets the kill onto the Ezreal, as now Kog'Maw is being chased out by a giant crocodile man with a surfboard. I would be terrified too. But he manages to escape. Renekton not quite having all the damage that some of his friends have, and we see that damage put on display right there. LeBlanc doing a ton of burst onto whomever she pleases, be that the Aatrox or be that the Zed from earlier. And LeBlanc might be in a little bit of trouble. She lands the snare onto the Udyr, but Zed flashes forward to try and chase after her. Now Soraka is snared up herself. Starcall comes down, and LeBlanc is at 100 health in the middle of the enemy jungle. Swap forward from the shadow, but the Shuriken does not land. There's the Soraka ult, but it's not going to be enough. Udyr, with the dot from Tiger Stance, picks up the kill. His Udyr's doing a lot of work. He's 8-4. He's the backbone of purple team at this point. He is what is keeping them in this game, and he is also chasing. Okay, he turned away. He decided not to chase. Probably a good idea. Didn't want to face check into those bushes. Might have been very dangerous even for somebody who is doing as well as he happens to be doing out of the jungle here. Looks like he's going for a Trinity Force right there. He did just finish it off, actually, just as I mentioned it. Serendipity. He's got the Sunfire Cape and a Trinity Force, as well as a Feral Flare built up, and he's still got that Spirit Stone in his inventory from back when he was trying to solo out that dragon, which I believe he did once. So that means that he's going to be doing quite a bit of damage. On the flip side of that, though, he will go down fairly quickly. Not incredibly quickly. He does have a Sunfire Cape, but he has essentially base magic resistance plus whatever runes and masteries he had, so that means that LeBlanc is going to be able to burst him down, especially considering that she has just finished off a Void Staff and already has Sorcerer's Shoes, essentially reducing what magic resistance he might have to nil. Oh my lord, this LeBlanc does damage. Aatrox brought down to 1/10 of his health bar after being hit by 3 spells, which, of course, LeBlanc can cast in very quick succession. She's going over the wall. Speaking of LeBlanc, brings the Zed back with her, and he's forced to swap away after that. She's at half health, though, and the stun lands. She's very lucky to have survived that. And now we see Lee Sin going into the middle of the enemy team. The Kog'Maw goes down first to the Ezreal. Sona turns around, finishes off the Lee Sin. But I don't think this is going to be a one-team fight for purple team. At best, a one-for-one trade. And actually, that seems like it might be just that. Ghost pop by the Udyr so he can escape through his jungle. And Zed swaps forward. Here's the Udyr. However, he does have Arcane Shift up. He's going to be able to escape there, even with the Ghost running. And Sona is doing damage. She finished off a Lich Bane. Well, that would be why. That would, in fact, be why the Sona is doing damage, because she has decided that she's the carry of bottom lane, and she's going to start building some damage items. Has the Lich Bane there. It does give her movement speed as well, which is quite nice on Sona, so I can see the merit in it. But they don't really have a true tank on purple team right now, which could be quite a problem. There's nobody who can really face tank that LeBlanc's damage and deal with her in the way they probably need someone to be able to do. They do have 2 Blades of the Ruined King, though, right next to each other. That's some nice symmetry. Dragon going down over to blue team. Renekton and Ezreal both get to the other side of the wall at the same exact time. Synergy. They're going to head on back to base. We're going to see purple team pushing up the middle lane, and we might get to see a team fight here fairly soon. That would be quite a treat, wouldn't it? Sona's been landing some very nice crescendos. Purple team is still on the back foot here, down by about 6,000 gold, but Sona has been landing some very good crescendos, and as we remember from the Season 3, Season 2 World Champ? Whichever World Championship it was that Sona was picked a lot, I don't know, I've watched too many League of Legends games. Oh, there's LeBlanc going in, she gets Oh, so much damage. And the crit onto Sona as well as Ezreal shifts forward. My good lord. There's just too many squishy people on Purple Team. LeBlanc can basically just choose anyone and press her buttons on them and they die. Except maybe Udyr, who does have a little bit of health, but still he doesn't have any proper magic resistance items, so he very well could go down to this LeBlanc as well, and we see a Baron started off by Renekton and Ezreal, the rest of their team closing in to help him out fairly soon as well. That is one thing about LeBlanc. She's not very good at taking Baron, but they have Ezreal and Lee Sin and Renekton for that, so they'll be able to take it down quickly enough, and Purple Team is nowhere nearby. Smite secures it for the Lee Sin. They're going to probably head on back to base, buy a few items, collect themselves, get into a good team formation, and push up maybe the middle lane, maybe the bottom lane, whichever lane they happen to dislike most from the enemy team, and go ahead and take some turrets. Or maybe they'll just run to the mid lane immediately and go ahead and push that up. Ezreal headed top to clear out some minions, and they might group up and push that out, or maybe just go for some sort of split push strategy, since Ezreal is very slippery, and it would be very hard for somebody to 1v1 him, though perhaps at this point the Zed could. Despite being 1-10, I know he hasn't been performing the best this game. He is still Zed, and it is still Ezreal, so he might be able to bring him down if he can keep next to him, which is the hardest task to do against an Ezreal in a fight against him. Snare lands onto Aatrox, but no follow-up there. No follow-up at all. Lee Sin around the corner looking to try and make something happen. Doesn't see that they're in the bush, though. He gets stunned up. He gets hit by the death mark. He does manage to kick away the Zed, and he's burning with the ignite. Udyr is chasing after him. He finally goes down, but not before Zed has fallen, and Udyr as well. It's a 2-for-1 trade. And that Lee Sin was just a little bit too slippery and a little bit too... Actually, it doesn't have any tank items, but the Zed just didn't quite do enough damage. So they weren't able to burst him down immediately, and they ended up trading both of themselves for that kill, which certainly is not worth it in the end. LeBlanc goes over the wall and instantly bursts down the Kog'Maw after a Q lens from Ezreal. That is... God. LeBlanc is doing a lot of work this game as the turret is under fire in the middle lane. There's an Ezreal here, and he has his passive stacking up, so he's going to be able to bring down that tower very swiftly. Inhibitor now under fire right after that. Renekton has shown up. He's here for the fun, too. Inhibitor goes down, and that is the first inhibitor of the game falling over to blue team as Ezreal shifts past the ulti from Sona. Nicely done. As Zed gets instantly bursted. Where did he even go? But Udyr is chasing after the Ezreal, trying to catch up to him. He has a lot of damage. The Ezreal gets healed. He manages to shift away just in time, and the Udyr falls. Before he can catch him, this Udyr seems to always have a kill an inch away from his grasp, but never seems to have quite a large enough grasp to pick up the kill and finish it off. Ezreal goes back and deals some good damage to the Aatrox, clearing out some minions as well. Blue team's going to regroup. They've got an inhibitor down, they've got free pressure pushing up the middle lane, and they've got Soraka there as well, providing some pressure. Not really sure if this is the best choice from Soraka, since there are some home guard boots on the side of Purple Team. They could maybe catch up to her. She does not have flash or any other sort of inborn mobility, so she has no way to get away from this. And the good damage coming out from Kog'Maw. He flashes forward, he lands the armor shred, but there is Lee Sin. He goes in with the Q. He follows it up, deals some great damage, bringing down the Kog'Maw with Dragon's Rage. However, Aatrox is trying to turn this around. The true damage from a Cathian Surprise doing some work. Soraka has her passive, though. She's very quick when running towards that low health ally, but Ignite brings her down. Now Ezreal's here, trying to turn something around here, but might be a little bit out of position. The death mark goes in onto Zed. He shifts away, and oh my lord, the burst from LeBlanc is real. Meanwhile, up in the top lane, Renekton is pushing up, and he gets the turret. That is a 6-3 turret lead for blue team, and there's a lot of minions here. I don't know if you really want to fight this one, Udyr. The Renekton has his ulti running. He has a bunch of minions helping him out, and Udyr cannot handle the 1v1. Renekton can, however, and Udyr falls for his hubris. The hubris of man, tiger, bird, boar, beast. Doesn't really sound quite as catchy as the hubris of man. But anyways, we're pushing up the middle lane. We're going after these Nexus turrets, and we may well see the victory here for blue team. But Aatrox comes speeding out of the base with home guard boots, and so they back up a little bit. They're not really confident enough to keep going for this. And you know what's really interesting? Lee Sin has a Trinity Force. And the last bit, Lee Sin doesn't have a single tanky item. He doesn't have any health aside from the phage component of that Trinity Force in his build. But it seems to be working out for him well enough. They do certainly have the advantage here, as we can see by the fact that Ezreal just got a double kill. He goes in, Lee Sin finishes off the Kog'Maw. However, Kog'Maw's passive is going to be more than enough. Actually, no, Zed finishes off Ezreal in the end, but it's a double kill for Lee Sin. That is a 4-for-2 trade. That is really not worth it. Safeguard away to a minion to create some distance. The ghost is popped, however, but here's Soraka. She doesn't land the slow, and the silence doesn't snare him up. Udyr gets the shutdown kill. However, Renekton is here to try and finish off the Udyr in kind. He's got some... No, he doesn't have quite enough health. Doesn't have quite enough movement speed either, and that is the ace for Renekton and Soraka. They're going to keep pushing up the middle lane. Go after the Nexus turrets. Actually, no, after the Nexus. The Nexus is entirely open. A turret fell during that exchange while Udyr was busy chasing people down. Probably not the best use of his time while his Nexus turrets were under heavy fire. But here's Aatrox and Sona coming rushing out of the base. They're trying to stop this aggression onto their Nexus. The stun lands, but it's not going to be enough. There's so much healing from Soraka. She manages to survive. Slow lands, the very edge of it lands onto the Soraka. Turns around with the silence, though, and here's Zed. Home Guards comes in with the Death Mark, deals some good damage on the Soraka. Ignite is burning, the Death Mark pops, but it's not quite enough. The Ignite is ticking. She does! She goes down. Ezreal comes across, not really accomplishing much. Some minions go a bit lower on health. Bit late to the party, Ezreal. And the Nexus is still bare. Renekton is still here, too. They didn't manage to push him away. Only the Soraka, and even then they traded back a kill for it. But they are holding on in this game, and I think it just crashed. I'm sorry, folks, but I just casted for 36 minutes, and I don't want that all to go to waste, so we can probably safely assume the blue team won. I will look at the victories. I will look at the stats on op.gg, which is where I got this replay from, and ensure that they did. Anyways, thank you for watching. Have a good one. I'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you guys for watching. If you'd like to see more of these casts, just leave a like, a comment, or subscribe to the channel. And if you want your replay to be featured in the series, just check the description. You can figure out how to do that down there. Many thanks to PepsiAverage for the use of this replay, and I will see you all tomorrow.